Do you consider yourself a school choice evangelist? Evangelism requires a zealous preaching, teaching, and promotion of the ministry of Jesus above all other options. Just like Christians are called to evangelize non-believers, as school choice evangelists, we got to minister to our non-school choice family and friends. And to do that, we got to know some numbers. Memorize these 5 simple economic arguments to become an effective school choice evangelist. 1. There are only 99,000 government schools versus 330,000 churches that sit empty 90% of the time. There are 50 million students in government K-12 schools. 50 million students divided by 330,000 churches is only 91 students per school. If each church opened a micro school, the church would replace the government school economy in 1 generation. 2, 35 states have passed school choice legislation. The momentum is on our side. School choice is funding to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic more effectively than the failing schools. And most importantly, school choice allows the church to address social justice issues like abortion, marriage, rebuilding the family, and entrepreneur training. 3, school choice is the only government program that shrinks government. Why? Because a good education expands economic opportunity. As citizens rise in education attainment, reliance on poverty programs will shrink. Explain to your friends and family that most school choice programs operate on only 40 to 60% of what is spent on the failing government schools. Then ask them, are you in favor of cutting your property taxes in half? 4, missionary work is not confined to third world countries. K-12 is a mission field in our own backyard. Start talking to your pastors about launching a micro school. It's a win-win. One of the top reasons parents prefer private school education is they want a partner in teaching moral instruction. Those one-room schoolhouses will attract young families. Here's the simplest formula to get started. Start with 1 kindergarten class of about 15 students, and then add a new kindergarten class each year. Missouri's Most Scholars program allows $6,750 per student. 15 students times $6,750 is $101,250 to manage 1 classroom. And don't forget, 600,000 government school teachers have quit the industry since COVID, so there will be no problem finding teachers. Another option is this trendy new homeschool model where kids come to school 3 days a week and then they homeschool 2 days a week. Either way, that's 15 kids saved from the government school indoctrination factory. And then the next year, another 15, then another 15 until your model is fully operational. 5, this school choice economics lesson specifically targets the Black community and the issue of reparations. Guess what? 85,000 of America's 330,000 churches are Black churches. Activating those buildings into micro schools for America's 7.7 million Black students, the ones that are largely trapped in the failing urban schools, is a game changer. At a modest $5,000 per student, that equates to $39 billion in annual revenue stream flowing into the Black community. How many Tuskegee Institutes could Booker T. Washington have built with $39 billion? So, dear Black America, what if private school is the 21st century version of 40 acres and a mule? Today, I'm sitting down with an economist who knows why school choice is a win for students, a win for parents, and a win for taxpayers. Let's get into it. Hope everyone has their thinking caps on today because we have a real-life economist in the studio with us. His bio says that Michael Austin is a free market economic consultant and president of Knowledge and Decisions Economic Consulting, and that he spends his professional life educating Americans about how to fight for pro-family, pro-freedom public policy. Then it says that Michael served as the chief economist to 2 Kansas governors, and he also served as the director of fiscal policy at the Kansas Policy Institute, where he regularly consulted with Kansas state legislators, which I have a lot of questions about. And you also served as an advisor to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights under President Trump. But, Michael, first, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Thank you. I've been following you on Twitter for a while. But there was one thing in your bio that jumped out at me. And the American Enterprise Institute dubbed you an emerging poverty scholar. What is an emerging poverty scholar? I have never heard of that in my life.
Okay, so I probably have to preface this already. It's a D.C. term, right?
Okay.
From Washington, D.C.
Okay.
A little more, no, probably about 10 years ago, when I was chief economist for then Governor Sam Brownback, one of the initiatives that he wanted to push out there was to make sure that everyone who was physically able and mentally able to have a job could have one. And that meant looking at the state's welfare system and trying to find ways that we could encourage people to get back to work. He believed, of course, that government has a role, and that's to help the hard cases or even be a temporary reprieve, but that has to be temporary. You have to take the steps to put yourself in a better situation. You can't just rely on government. So with that initiative in mind, I had done research on what was then termed the HOPE Act in Kansas, which was basically welfare reform and means testing those types of handouts. So we got it passed, and it was very successful. And that put me on the radar for American Enterprise Institute. So being I was only in my early 20s, they invited me up to D.C. along with other young scholars all across the country and created this program as an emerging poverty scholar. So just connecting them with other scholars out there, either at AEI or in the D.C. area, so that we can continue to promote more, financial independence for Americans.
Okay, now that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was like, where did that come from? Okay, so I want to get into our dominant theme today, school choice. As a dominant theme for me online, when I'm following you, you're always posting something about what's going on in Kansas or Missouri regarding school choice. For me and you, it's a no-brainer. But some people can't see the forest for the trees. And sometimes these people are conservative. More likely, more than I'm comfortable with, I'm arguing with conservatives. Of course, the liberals come and I fight with them too. They create all manner of straw man arguments to justify locking poor and minority kids in failing schools. So I want you to help me out. I'm constantly getting back and forth with these myths. And I need you to talk to me about why school choice is a win-win for students. Why is it a win-win for parents? And why is it a win-win for the taxpayers?
Okay, so I think before we jump into that deep end, let's just explain what school choice is. I think it's pretty straightforward, choosing your school. But what does it effectively mean? It means that under our current system, it takes a certain number of taxpayer dollars to send your kid to a public school, right? For every state, it's different. Kansas, for example, it's approaching 20,000 taxpayer dollars per child per year, right, to attend a government or a public school. School choice basically says, if we can alleviate the expense of that $20,000 per student, what if we gave some of that back to you? And instead, you took that money to go to a private school. In Kansas, as an example, 1 year at a private school is not $20,000.
Right.
It's around half, a little bit less than half. So what if we just split the difference? What if we gave you some of your money back? You can take your kid to a private school. Maybe the government can even keep the rest of those taxpayer dollars. But by allowing your child to leave, you can maximize the best education available for your child, and the government doesn't lose anything, right? Instead of having $20,000 to spend on one kid, maybe they have $10,000 on no kid to spend, right? And so there's the logic in and of itself, but fundamentally why it's beneficial is because it introduces competition, right? If you go to Walmart and they don't have your favorite brand of orange juice, right? You can go to Dillon's or you can go to Price Chopper and find that orange juice, or go to Amazon.
Exactly. And that's what everybody does every day. But all of a sudden, when we're talking about school choice, these magic blinders come on and they don't understand competition anymore.
Exactly. So why do we have it with our cars? We have it with our homes. We have it with our groceries, but we can't have that with our schools.
Exactly.
And I think fundamentally the issue is because we have, frankly, teachers unions, not teachers, but teachers unions, right? Or those who are in administration within public schools that don't want kids to leave. They don't want to lose that locus of control. And so they're willing to spin a narrative, spin a tale, spin some sort of gaslight in order to create some sort of false reality to keep people scared and frankly, with their kids under their control.
And that's what I try to express to people. So as a part of my journey on the left, I pretty much touched every leftist issue, including being a union steward. I am a former union steward for 5 years. It was in the private market, but I do understand how unions work from the inside out. And so they are designed to concentrate power and to minimize whether or not outsiders can have any impact on the status quo. So you just basically laid out the win-win for students is they get to go and get a feel for different schools and find the one that works best for them. That clearly works for parents and students. And then taxpayers, you broke down, hey, it's half price to send your school to a private school.
Yeah.
Why are we so committed to the building instead of the outcome? It's like they only care if they're in this building. It's not about whether or not they're winning in that building, but that building has become the idol. So I hope that Michael has made that clear to everyone. It's not about the building. Let the parents decide, and then it's a win-win because taxpayers get to save money. Okay. So again, I know you've heard all this before. I'm going to go back over some more pushback because unfortunately, this movement is riddled with mythology. My favorite school choice myth is public funds belong in public schools. You hear that one. And your specific pushback to that one?
My pushback would be funding for education should, or should I say, funds for education should fund education.
Right.
Right. About my pushback would be, and I think there's a common phrase among the school choice advocate, say you have to fund students, not the system.
Right.
What they're talking about is that because they're taxpayer dollars, they need to go to a taxpayer-funded building. No, the whole purpose of the system is to educate children. So educating dollars should stay with the child, and that's exactly what school choice allows. If you allow your kid to go from a public school to either a homeschool or private school, you should be able to take some of your tax dollars back and have that fund towards the education of that child. There's nothing that should, be, let's say here, segregating your child based off of their zip code.
Right.
I think that's also one thing that we need to push back on as well, is that, people want to talk about integration and desegregation. We still have a form of that today, which is the sense of by where you live, you are told where you can and cannot go to school based on your tax dollars.
I push back on that one. Even telling them, school choice, the public schools do not give you school choice, not true choice, because if you cross that boundary and you go and enroll your kid in another school district where you do not live, they literally will prosecute you. We have real life examples of people who have been arrested and put in jail, prosecuted, the full weight and force of the state coming down on one random mom because she wanted to get a better education for her child.
And let me add this, those who say public funds for public schools, they have no problem when private dollars are going to public schools, right? Where your private dollars are going to booster clubs or they're going to donations or sporting event revenues. That's okay.
Oh,
right?
I'm stealing that. Okay, I haven't been using that one.
They don't have a problem when it's the reverse, but they only use it when it's, of course, towards their own convenience. And so I think if you hear that, push back and see whether they truly mean that, or is it really just finding an excuse to stick on the wall about why you can't let my kid go to another school.
It's that one. I was a leftist. You're not dealing with honest brokers, people. Stop falling for it. Okay. So this next question, this one is very frustrating for me because I am a born and raised Kansan. So I'm sensitive to this border war stuff. So I'm a little disappointed in what's going on in Kansas right now.
Okay, here we go. Go ahead.
Okay, so Kansas passed school choice in 2015. Nobody knows about it, but we passed school choice in 2015. Missouri was lagging behind. 2019, they passed a school choice bill. But then Kansas was just trying to expand the bill. and it failed. Were you in on that conversation?
Okay, yes. So back in 2015, Kansas had passed what they called a low-income tax credit. Basically, if you're low income, you should be able to get a credit on your taxes and use that credit to take your kid to any other school that you want to.
That's the worst name I've ever heard. I just want you to know. As a former liberal, I talk to the audience and tell them branding is critical in your
Messaging is important.
movement. So if we're going to have a movement, we have to have cute names like Mo Scholars. That was really good. So Kansas is going to have to rebrand that. If you
That's
have
a fair point.
If you have any say on that, call them up and rebrand that name.
Well, we have plenty of time to do that because we didn't get school choice passed, unlike Missouri. We had an option in the last maybe 2 years of doing a universal school choice program. In other words, saying exactly as we described, you take a portion of the taxpayer dollars that you are already sent in, give it back to you, and use that to take your child anywhere that they want to go. We had gotten 63 votes in the House, which is just enough to get it passed. But we also have a Democrat governor. And she's a Democrat governor who accepts donor funds from, who's that corrupted governor out in Illinois? Blagojevich? No, he was the one that got arrested.
Right.
Pritzker,
Yeah.
right? She accepts donor money from him, and she is in the pocket of those unions, and so she does not want to let that go. So part of the reason why we're stuck here in Kansas and not having expansive or universal school choice like Missouri is simply for the fact that our burden of getting legislation out has to be an override past a far leftist governor. Whereas in Missouri, you guys just got universal school choice, so congratulations. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some folks decide to move across the border just so that they can take that opportunity of better schools.
Right, and up till now, we were seeing the opposite. Even for public schools, people would leave Missouri, move to Kansas, Johnson County to go and access better schools. So now we're going to see some of that reverse brain drain. But okay, I just wanted to know if you were in on that conversation and what happened.
You said border. I was almost thinking we were going to talk about the Chiefs and the Royals. So
I saw you post on that. That went down in flames, so I was happy about that. I don't think they're moving to Kansas, but that's a whole different show. Okay, so I'm going to move to the fun part of the show.
Okay.
And this one I call School Choice in the News. So how it works is I'm going to show Michael a video clip that reflects on the state of school choice in America. For the audience that may be listening and not watching, I'm going to set up the clip. This scene is from the Louisiana legislature where Jason Hughes, a black Democrat, goes against his party and votes for school choice. It's only about 30 seconds, so let's take a look.
As I watch children in poverty, trapped and failing schools, who can hardly read, I'd be damned if I will continue to defend the status quo. Too many of our children are dropping out. And then we wonder why we had to have a crime session. Because our students can hardly read.
Okay, Michael, what do you think about that?
beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It speaks to a truth. And the truth is that those who benefit the most from getting their kids into better schools tend to be those who are in urban communities. And that means those who are areas that are predominantly African-American, predominantly Hispanic, obviously they, like Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, they stand to gain, right, from leaving their landlocked area and unfortunately poor performing school and going someplace better. And you have legislators who are acknowledging that and saying, yeah, I'm a Democrat. Yeah, we're supposed to be against this, but I can't vote against this and then look my people in the eye, right, and say, I don't want a better opportunity for your child. I have to do something different. And so all across the country, we're noticing, and particularly African-American Democrat legislators who are bucking the trend and saying, this just goes too far. I can't support legalized segregation. You know, I have to, for at least this issue, go across the other aisle and do something for my constituents.
Had you seen that one before on social media?
I had not, but I had seen other black legislators Democrat legislators across the country make similar moves. I think there were some in Tennessee. Was there one in Missouri?
There were three, and it just happened about 2 weeks ago in Missouri. 3 crossed over, 2 black, 1 white male crossed over and voted to support expanding school choice in Missouri. One guy was the deciding vote in Nebraska, a black state senator. And that clip from Louisiana, he was one of six black Democrats all crossed over and voted to support school choice in Louisiana. So one of the things that I talk about when I'm trying to explain how you create social movements, which is a completely different model that the left uses. The right, they use issue advocacy, which doesn't work or is so temporary. And while the left uses social movements to change the culture. So you've heard of the civil rights movement.
Yes.
You've heard of the feminist movement, the pro-choice movement, the labor movement, the marriage equality movement. All this stuff is happening right underneath you guys' noses, and you're not seeing, hey, they do something different. So you have to create these movements, and you take your issue, you put it inside of the movement, and you're going to transform the culture. Once you transform the culture, the laws automatically sort of don't matter. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, so we have, with this issue, school choice, the capacity to turn it into a movement. Once you get the movement and you start seeing mutation, which is what I was talking about when I started seeing this, your movement is mutating. You're getting non-traditional partners. You have to go after them because they're going to become your strongest allies. Like me, I leave the left. Once I leave the left, I'm now on fire for the conservative side. I'm dragging conservatives, arguing and fighting with them like, no, we have to fight. You know, it's like a war for me. Okay, so I did want to talk about some good news. I can't leave Kansas hanging. Okay, so I want to talk about some good news that came out of Topeka. I saw you post on this as well, and it had to do with the RAINS Act.
Yes.
I never heard of this before.
Okay.
What is it, and how is it going to disrupt business as usual?
So remember how, earlier in our talk today, you talked about how, look, messaging matters, right? So the reason why this is called the RAINS Act is kind of like pulling the reins on a horse, right? You want to guide the horse where it needs to go, and if necessary, even stop it by pulling on those reins. Well, this is the exact same concept, but instead of it being a horse, it's about government. We want to be able to pull the reins on government, and particularly it speaks about regulation. What the bill does, it basically says whenever a regulation is being made, let's put a fiscal note to it. Let's put an economic impact analysis on that regulation. How much is it going to cost in terms of the economic activity of the state? Is it going to retard, the economy by $1,000 or $1 million? If it's $1 million or more, instead of it going through the normal rubber stamping state agency checking boxes, take it back to the legislature. Let the elected officials vote on whether that regulation is really necessary or not.
So it won't get implemented until it goes back to the legislature.
That's right. The legislature has to approve it.
So all the bureaucrats are going to be fired.
Oh, they did not like it at all.
Oh my gosh. You're telling me it took us 250 plus years to figure that out. This doesn't make any sense.
We always knew it, right? And it was enshrined in our Constitution, right? The lawmakers should make the laws because that's who you vote for. But, lawmakers are also, to be honest, most of them lazy. And so they shift that responsibility to either the governor, the executive branch, the president. They don't want to do their jobs. And so we have to put in legislation to do common sense things, like making sure that no regulation should have the force of law. A legislature should be able to remove it because that's what the people want. But I'm glad we were the second state, I believe,
Look at Kansas.
in the country to get this type of
Kansas.
legislation passed.
Oh, Yellow Brick Road, all that jazz. Okay, you guys, I'm with Michael Austin. He's an economist. How often do you meet an economist? Never. So I follow you on Twitter. So I know your name is Kansas KS Economist. So that's at KS Economist on Twitter. But if people wanted to find you, how else would they contact you?
Well, they use the same handle on Facebook, at KS Economist. You can, of course, just also Google my name, Michael Austin, Kansas, see what pops up.
You came up.
Yep, I'm always speaking on whatever policy issues all across the state. You can also find me on Project 21, which is a consortium of African-American conservatives speaking on national issues. I have a bio there. Yes. ncppr.org, National Center for Public Policy Research. You can find me there as well on my national opinions and comments.
Okay, you guys, reach out to Michael, have him come and speak to your group. I'm going to get him some names that they can rebrand this Kansas School Choice Choice program. Hopefully, I'll give you an update if it goes through. So, you guys, it's a wrap for this week. But I need you guys to get fearless about your school choice evangelism. Just like evangelists have to go out and talk to their friends and family about Christianity, we have to start talking to our friends and family who are not supporting school choice. So we're going to have to memorize the economics of school choice. You should know we have 3 times more churches than government schools. You should be able to start a conversation with your pastor about launching a micro school using Proverbs 22:6. Train them up in the way they should go, and when he is old, he will not depart. You should know that school choice is the only government program with the power to shrink government. And hopefully, you're going to be able to frame school choice as a form of 21st century reparations. Ooh. Because the fate of America will not be determined in the White House. It will be determined in the schoolhouse. If you want to learn more about leveraging school choice as a tool to defeat the woke mind virus, I'm posting new content every week. So don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Ciao for now.